Okay.
All right.
Other questions? All right. Well, there you have it. Um, so now I'm going to turn it over to Remy for your discussion of the workforce development update. You were with us last year, and so it's all to you, Remy.
Well, Alex and everybody, thank you so much for having me on to give you an update. I'll be quick, I promise. I do want to thank Brian and Julie for allowing us, including my colleague Lori Mays with the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce and Talent Pipeline Management Group, to come back and give you a more detailed presentation after the new year, because workforce, I think, is going to be a critical issue for us all. Just a quick update, though, on the local level. I think using Kentucky as just one model, we've come a long way. And in fact, referring to the cooperation and work done by Lori and the Chamber and KEEP, we've been able to do a lot of research, and in fact have linked a lot of training pipelines between high school level, 2-year community college workforce training programs like the one I run, and 4-year institutions, Kentucky Ag Equine Program, for example. These are great models that I think eventually can be expanded state by state and nationally. That's a local perspective. I think on a greater scale, we all need to look at what we do nationally. We revert back to what Alex, you had mentioned earlier on with the guest visa issues. My strong feeling is that until we approach a workforce the same way we approached unwanted horses or racing medication, this will continue to become a bigger and bigger challenge. One of the key things I've found personally is that you have a guest worker immigration issue that we have to deal with, like we mentioned before, but the labor issue, which is a domestic training avenue, is just as critical. Until we can incentivize and recruit domestic workers into our industry, pay them what they ought to be paid, finding that work-life balance and things like that, it's going to be a growing problem. What I find with a lot of our grads, for example, is that they'll go work for a trainer, but they expect almost very quickly to want to move up, become an assistant trainer or a foreman and what have you. And we still have to fill those semi-skill or low-skill jobs that a lot of trainers rely on. So that's one of the key things that we continue to work to develop solutions for. Bullet point number 2, I think this is a critical issue that we need to tie together with our efforts with developing a strategy on work visas, guest worker visas. To your point earlier on, I do feel that a Biden administration would bring back a big push on the community college level 2-year workforce training focus that Dr. Jill Biden worked very heavily on while Vice President Biden was in office. That can be an opportunity, I think, going back and developing that. But I think marrying that with an effort on getting additional guest worker visas would be probably a good strategy to have, as opposed to having them work separately. The third point I wanted to bring up was working with Lori at KEEP and Kentucky Chamber of Commerce. We've been able to launch a horseman's apprenticeship certification program. That was a lot of work, but it is now available in every state. So essentially, it's a 2,000-hour, roughly 1-year traditional apprenticeship program. And that word apprenticeship rings a lot of bells in Washington, D.C. with the Department of Labor. There's a lot of money in developing apprenticeship programs. This one would basically open the door for an individual to work and earn while they're working for a farm manager or a trainer. And while they're doing that, they can also attain a Department of Labor recognized certificate of completion once they've done the 2,000 hours of course competencies that would be required. That is very important for a lot of the parents of our students because they want to see a career pathway. They want to see a certificate type of structure as opposed to just going and working and getting that job. So that's available for horsemen all across the country. And again, after the new year, we'll be able to give you a lot more detail on a lot of these things. The fourth item, thanks to Godolphin, we've now launched into exploring the issue of workforce globally. And I think that that's where this can become an important issue when we see that it's not just a North America, US problem, but it's a problem in France and Ireland and England and elsewhere. I think that can bring a lot of weight to our work, our lobbying, the different things that we'll be doing. The project now is called Together for Racing International. It's been going now since November. Of course, with COVID, there's been a lot of delays, but I think it's going to be a worthy effort, and our thanks to the folks at Godolphin for putting their force behind this effort. So that kind of wraps up my key talking points. And again, like I said, come New Year, hopefully we'll be able to do a joint presentation for what we've been working on in Kentucky. But I do feel that there's a lot of potential. I'll go back to a quick point. Back in March, thanks to Brian and Julie, I was able to do a conference call right before COVID started with the head of the Pennsylvania Equine Council and with Todd Mosseller at the Pennsylvania HBPA. It was very enlightening because neither had ever really known the other. And this is at the grassroots level in a state other than Kentucky. But at the end of the call, it was very inspiring because they said, hey, we need to work together to find kids who want to work at the track or vice versa. So I think that shows that with the help of the American Horse Council and all your contacts and your structure, that we could very quickly get to a national approach, a national grassroots level approach, and not just on particular states. That being said, I think that still a lot of work to be done. I think, again, this is a very, very critical issue and is every bit as important as some of our other major hurdles in our industry. I'll leave it open for questions.
Remy, it's Jim. I certainly agree with you. This is going to be our next big challenge, I suspect. We met with Godolphin, as you know, we've collaborated with them on things in the past, and we met with them today, and we're planning to support both their domestic and their international program here in Point Four. You and they, thank you for taking the leadership on this. It's an important subject, and it's going to become even more so in the future, no doubt, after we get through this.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Remy? Okay, well, thank you, Remy. I appreciate that. Always good to hear from you. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
We have a couple more issues I want to touch on before we, I think we're expected to start with the folks from the O'Connell office at 2 o'clock, right, Brian?
That's right. Yep.
So, very quickly, let me cover a couple of issues. First is 3-year depreciation of racehorses. You may recall that even though we now have bonus depreciation, which allows a new horse owner to depreciate a horse in the year of purchase, there are certain owners, including owners who are passive owners in large partnerships who would prefer and who, for accounting reasons, would need to use a longer, perhaps a 3-year depreciation schedule, which is a depreciation schedule that applies today to all horses, but under the code, it applied only to horses that put into service, began training after the 24th month of their lives. We have for several years been asking for Congress to update the depreciation schedule for racehorses, giving the individuals who put their horses into service in the first 24 months of their life to also utilize the 3-year depreciation schedule. But for that action, young horses put into service early, as they should for all sorts of reasons. We want horses training when they're younger. That gives them, it's safer for horses to train and to build bones as 2-year-olds. But if you do that under the old code, it was a 7-year depreciation schedule, which is a long depreciation schedule for horses. So we've been successful in convincing Congress to apply a uniform 3-year depreciation schedule to all racehorses and to all individuals choosing to use the standard depreciation form and not to go under the bonus depreciation that's now available to them. And we were successful. And through the end of this year, horse owners are now able to depreciate under the bonus depreciation 1-year schedule or the 3-year depreciation schedule for any horse, regardless of when that horse begins training. It was part of the extenders package. Well, at this point in time, what we're asking is for there to be an extension of that as part of the tax extenders package, which may or may not still exist. It's sort of there's been a lot of discussion about whether there will be a tax extenders package this year, but we're in the conversation. We're trying to get them to extend this legislation through 2020 and into future years. We're hoping that this doesn't fall on deaf ears. It's possible it could come up during lame duck. We're not sure, lame duck being the session between election and the new Congress. It's always a fight. We always have to wait. Sometimes it even has to be done retroactively, as it was for this current year. We actually were able to get an extender package in 2019 that went back to the beginning of 2018. Hopefully we'll get something done in 2020 that will extend to 2021 and beyond. Or best case, we would get a permanent bill, and Representative Andy Barr has that bill. He introduced it, the Horse Race Cost Recovery Act. He introduced it in 2019. It hasn't gone anywhere, but that would be the ideal solution, would be a permanent fix. We'll keep you apprised as to how that's going, but at this point in time, it looks as though if it's going to happen, it's going to happen in the lame duck. Any questions? Okay. One last issue. I'll get this in very quickly. That is an issue related to credit cards and how they are being used or not used, as the case may be. Our ADWs have account funding transactions, especially new account holders. It's best that they are able to use their credit cards to fund those initial accounts so they can get those accounts up and operating. What's happened is early on in the process, in the last 4 or 5 years, we've discovered that many credit card companies, major credit card companies, were not allowing their credit cards to be used for funding transactions. We were able to convince them through a variety of means, working with our allies on Capitol Hill, especially on the House Financial Services Committee. And as a result, Chase Bank, which is the largest credit card issuer, they did approve the use of Chase cards. We still have a problem with Bank of America and Capital One. We continue to work with those, but it's a hard slog. We almost had it accomplished, and then COVID hit, and I think everything is back to square one right now. But we'll continue to try to make it possible for people to use as many kinds of credit cards as possible to fund those ADW transactions. And with that, Ryan, do we have anybody?
We do. So at this point, I'd just like to remind everybody that this portion of the conversation is strictly off the record. we're going to be joined by Terry Van Doren and Mason Foley of Senator McConnell's office. So if you give me 1 second, I will pause the recording, and I see that Mason and Terry have joined us. So wait 1 second.
Well, we've come to other business on the agenda. Are there other issues that anyone would like to raise with the group? This is a time before we go into executive session. There are other issues we might want to discuss at this point in time. Brian and I worked on this agenda. We certainly tried to be comprehensive, but perhaps we neglected to bring something up that you'd like to bring to the attention of the group.
Any other business?
I see.
I don't see any messages.
Either. Okay.
All right,
Well,
Alex, I'd like to, a lot has happened with Paycheck Protection, as you know, over the past 6 months. So I'd just like to briefly outline some of the clarifications that have taken place.
Okay, that's good. We did kind of skip
a clear
over.
idea. We've danced around it and talked about it sporadically. So in subsequent bills and SBA guidance, fortunately, we did receive an important clarification stating that farmers who file an IRS Form 1040 Schedule F can qualify for Paycheck Protection. And this is very good news for many breeding farms. Ag groups that have also won a set aside for small and community banks that benefit rural borrowers. Most important to racing, Alex has said that racetracks now qualify for the program. We were excluded under the original program, along with prostitutes and lobbyists, among others. So that was not especially good company. And finally, SBA did issue a rule stating that seasonal employers can use an alternative base period to calculate payroll, which should please any CPAs and tax lawyers we have on the call. So those are the highlights of what's happened so far.
Right. I would underscore that if you're having questions about or concerns, I would contact an accountant or a law firm. This is extraordinarily complicated stuff. It's hard to summarize it in a meeting such as this. And there may be opportunities there that we haven't identified for your specific organization. It's a lot of detail there. So I would urge you to, I see more accountants speaking out on this than law firms, but I think there are plenty of folks out there in the business who'd love to help you out.
Definitely.
Other business?
Mr. Chairman.
I don't see any other business. At this point in time, what I'd like to do is adjourn the open meeting and go into executive session. And that's where those of you who are members of the committee, you've been identified as such in the document that Brian sent out earlier or late last week. I'd like to just ask you to stick around, and for everyone else, we thank you for your participation. We don't have a specific agenda in our executive session, but that's where we'd like to go right now. Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Everyone.
So those of you who are not members of the committee, please sign out, and we will convene an executive session.